Bill Henshaw here, your friendly local constitutional coot from San Francisco, who's still out here, amazingly enough, 5 months later in Iowa, still working on some very big deals here, which I'll be talking about more in upcoming videos. But it's astounding. I'm in what looks like a Midwestern red state, and you sure as hell wouldn't know it, when you're in their courtrooms and this, that, and the other. And yet the people I've met in Iowa, and there haven't been that many of them in a small town population, 1,200, but you look at that and you talk to them and you say, how in the world did these people get the government that they have now? If they knew better, and they don't, and it's not their fault, none of this would be in place. I mean, there are things going on here I haven't even seen in California, for crying out loud. But that said, my recent studies, and I've been familiar with the work of Justice Joseph Story, and those of you who don't know, he was the leading member of the Supreme Court back in the early to mid 19th century, on the court for 30 years, and considered the leading constitutional expert of his time. And I think that's still true today. And best of all, the justices on the court now know it. And you read his commentaries, and he makes it clear, and no legalities there. It's plain English back in the day, that Congress had to create lower federal courts, and they had to vest those courts with all of the jurisdiction that the Constitution mandates. The big deal about that now is we don't have anything remotely resembling that. Now, that said, we do, at least in theory, have what looks like a United States District Court, but they have another side of that court called the Federal Circuit Court, and that's the Supreme Court saying it, not me. And you'll learn all about that. Send me an email for information, youwinincourt@gmail.com. Those courts have to be there, judicial courts. If they're not there, every law on the books is null and void, non pro tunc ab initio, as at least a bill of attainder. The taking of life, liberty, or property without judicial process, most particularly a trial by jury according to the course of the common law. And that's particularly true in settings lately. And by the way, the evictions may be the next hot button for the U.S. Supreme Court when they get back in session the first Monday in October. They've already ruled against it, although not overtly. But the case you want to read, and send me an email, as I said, youwinincourt@gmail.com, AXON v. FTC, seemingly unrelated. If you read that case and didn't know what it was, you would think it was an eviction case. And among other things, that's because the fat cat corporate landlords think they can go in there and just throw your ass out without even bothering with the trial by jury or anything else for that matter. And they can do that, by the way, because those fat cat corporate landlords in the state capitals, control the legislatures with their political activity committees, and they can get any damn laws they want enacted. But the good news for us is this is only true in a legislature in the state capital in which the sovereign body politic is not represented. And we aren't in any branch of government. And you have to ask yourself, how the hell did that happen? And you learn by studying my materials, that's primarily the ratification of the non-existent 14th War Amendment, which, as I've said in earlier videos, the Supreme Court contemporaneously ruled unconstitutional. It's not there. The de facto system is not there. And here we have Justice Story, the leading commentator on the Constitution ever, saying those judicial courts have to be there. And an interesting specter about this, and you'll learn more about this studying my materials, is we can go into a state common law court if you know what you're doing, even though there's no states. That's an astounding statement, and I can back it up fully, because we have a right to a judicial court from day one. We haven't made any voluntary, knowing, and intelligent waiver of rights, and that's the Supreme Court reference standard case of Johnson v. Zerbst, 304 U.S. 458. And we couldn't possibly do that, people, since the plain fact of the matter is And you instinctively know this. You'll learn more why later. And I was the same way when I started out, because we walk into the front door of their courtrooms, we're considered incompetent. I mean, that's how they get around all this crap. And that's because they think that you're a corporate citizen that owes your citizenship to the 14th War Amendment. Now, if that's the case, how could we possibly make a voluntary, knowing, and intelligent waiver of rights? And it gets even better. If we're incompetent, how is it that we magically seem to regain competence every 2 to 4 years on election day? Wow, there are issues here that beat them. I mean, if I get this to a jury comprised of fifth graders, they're going to understand that, even if law school graduates don't. But here again, that's just his story for you. And he's saying in no uncertain terms that those courts have to be there. He says otherwise that the Congress can in effect do away, with the Constitution by using provisions in the Constitution set up to do the exact opposite. And what he said about that was that outcome cannot be sound. They have to be there. And that's what I'm going to help you to do, is find those judicial courts wherever they are. And there's some surprising things you'll learn about that. Send me an email, youwinincourt@gmail.com, because they're there. And if we get to them, the other side can't even come in there. They don't have standing in our judicial courts. We don't in theirs, but it doesn't matter since they can't even make effective service of process. You'll learn a lot more about that issue too. So send me an email, youwinincourt@gmail.com. It's exactly the black as white, just like this whole system has been for arguably the last 140 years. Because everything that you taught in school and think is true is not true. It's the reverse. I mean, our founding fathers ordained and established this Constitution to establish the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Not Chase Bank, not IBM, our posterity. We have the rights. They don't. All you have to do is start acting like it. And I've gotten a bit better lately with some advice from some of my friends to tone things down a little bit, because as you see, I get very emotional about it, and I do. And when I show up in one of their courts, and it's rare these days, but sometimes I really got to fight it to keep them going in there and acting like I own the place and ordering them what to do. But in plain fact of the matter is, we have that power, people. This is a principal and agent relationship. The usurpers think it's guardian and ward, better known out there to you people as master and slave. Things haven't changed in 160 years, except that what they did with the non-existent 14th War Amendment, among other things, they made us all equal, not by elevating the freedmen to state citizenship, which could not be done in the way they attempted to do it. They made us all equal by reducing us to the level of the freedmen. In other words, we're all slaves here. Nothing changed at all, except that the government now thinks it owns and controls everybody from coast to coast. That's what has to change. We have a window of opportunity here to change it. Exciting things happening on the Supreme Court the last 3 or 4 terms, and I can talk in great detail about that, and I will on another video. And that's one reason, by the way, if you have claims to make, and by the way, even some of you people have suffered evictions or convictions or traffic court, this, that, and the other, it doesn't matter what it is. There's no statute of limitations on the deceit, fraud, and treason we can prove happened. None of this 1983 civil rights bullshit, where you have 6 months or maybe a year. And then if you don't know, 97% of cases like that get thrown out on the first motion to dismiss, usually without even a hearing. I mean, that's how bad it is. They don't think any of us have any rights they're bound to respect. And that's what we want to change. And we've got a real chance to do that now, make it better for you, your family, and your posterity, and all of us across the board. Get away from this civil rights crap and do it now. And those people in the ACLU and people like that, NAACP, they're on the backs of their own people by advocating this crap when they know, or should know, what they're really doing is invoking federal regional martial law rule and affirming the existence of slavery, not challenging it. So sometimes I run on a little bit here and talk too long, but you see how exciting it can be and how it should be. That's what the framers did. Wasn't a perfect government, but the best one ever invented, and they did everything they could, to keep us from giving it away, which is what's happened, although we haven't given it away as much as the New York banksters have taken it away. Story for another day. But it's exciting, exciting business. And here I am, I'll be 75 in September, and my life is ahead of me. And I still have work to do over the course of the next 8 or 10 years, with family history being what it is. It's exciting every day, and that's what I want to teach you, so that you'll have that same feeling. Because once you do that, they can't beat you again. Because if we know we own them, that changes the whole equation. And we have Justice Story to thank a lot of for that. And you'll learn a lot more about him. Send me an email, unincourt@gmail.com. Like the video, subscribe, tell your friends, get the word out. Thank you.